Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So today we will be talking about Rosalia. She's someone who's been fun to follow over the years because she's really talented, gives amazing live performances, and she's so very clearly dedicated to her craft. And so in today's video, I do want to talk a little bit about how Rosalia developed into the performer that she is, and talk about her career, obviously, and then a little bit of the controversy or some of the issue that some people do take with her music and with her artistry. And heads up, I clearly am American, so I do have an American accent, so I will do my best to pronounce everything as correctly as is physically possible for me, but let's go ahead and get into the video. Rosalia Vila Tabella was born and raised in the outskirts of Barcelona and had an interest in music from an early age. At about 13, her friends introduced her to flamenco, a type of Spanish folk music. Several of Rosalia's friends had Andalusian heritage, which is where flamenco originated. Andalusia is a region in southern Spain. It was under Moorish rule from the 8th to 15th century, and remnants of their influence are present in the architecture, music, and culture of the region. In addition, the region was ethnically and culturally diverse due to the influence from other surrounding cultures, such as the Jews and the Roma, from the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Rosalia's family didn't have a musical background, and they primarily listened to music in English. She herself mostly listened to English music until she discovered her passion for flamenco. Eventually, she enrolled in dance classes and worked on refining her vocals. By the time she was 16, Rosalia was accepted to study flamenco at the Catalonia College of Music, a position for which only one student per year is accepted. There, she was instructed by Jose Miguel Vizcaya, a prominent flamenco artist. The following year, at 17, Rosalia underwent surgery after tearing one of her vocal cords due to the rigorous lessons and practice. She was unable to sing for a year while recovering. Rosalia trained and studied at the Catalonia College of Music for nearly 9 years, honing all aspects of flamenco performance. Vizcaya said that he always found Rosalia talented and hardworking, but wanted to make sure she knew how to create and select the right music for her unique voice. Since Rosalia also wrote and composed songs, instead of having to select songs that fit her, she could create her own. During her studies, Rosalia worked as an independent artist and performed at several local events and weddings. For a time, she was the lead singer of a flamenco group called Coachella. In addition, she collaborated with several other Spanish artists and began working as a flamenco teacher and vocal coach. Over the years, she became a relatively well-known performer in the flamenco circuit. Rosalia said aside from what she learned in school, she always tried to learn from artists that she worked with who were older than her. Much of Rosalia's early discography was created while she was still in school, with some of the music being made to count towards her degree. In 2016, she signed with Universal Music and began working on her debut album, Los Angeles, with Raúl Refri. Raúl is a Spanish musician, composer, and producer. He and Rosalia worked on 2 albums together, but Los Angeles was the only one to be released. The concept album is classified as folk and new flamenco, and in it, Rosalia grapples with the theme of death. Los Angeles is an album made primarily of cantes and showcases Rosalia's ability as a solo cantadora, or female flamenco singer. Flamenco consists of 3 primary parts: cante or palo, which is the singing, baile, which is the dance, and toque, which is the guitar playing. Other parts include the palmas, or hand claps, the pitos, which is finger snapping, and jaleos, which is all the chorus singing and shouts of encouragement. Jaleos actually translates to hell-raising in English. Those unfamiliar with flamenco often mistake the dancing as the most important part of the performance, when in truth it is the singing. Angeles follows the typical structure of a flamenco singer's debut. However, Rosalia altered some elements to put her modern spin on them. She said about this, "I feel like with Los Angeles, I wanted to establish my musical legacy and honor the classic sound of flamenco in the most traditional sense, respecting them to the maximum with a pop and experimental structure, but with very basic instrumentation and a minimalist sound, just guitar and voice." She said while her music is based on melodies and lyrics from traditional cantes, her music isn't entirely that, but those familiar with flamenco will notice the similarities. Critics praise Rosalia's debut effort for being a modern, avant-garde take on traditional folk-style music. Some noted Rosalia's potential to take not just flamenco, but the music world at large by storm. She was also praised for enchanting vocals, which work as an instrument on their own. However, some critics who disliked Los Angeles claimed it was artificial or not real flamenco. Flamenco specialist Sylvia Cruz stated, "I also insist on talking about Referee because the criticisms are always aimed against her and rarely if ever against him when he is the producer and primary author of this album. I do not think Los Angeles does any harm to flamenco, but it is a decontextualized product. Apart from the lyrics, I do not hear anything in it that evokes the history of flamenco, its roots, or its hallmarks. For that reason, it does not seem to me a groundbreaking or revolutionary work, and if it has come to save anything, it is the music industry, not flamenco." Los Angeles was named by ABC as 2017's Best Spanish Language Album. The Barcelonan edition of Time Out also named the album as the Best of the Year. In addition, Rosalia received a Best New Artist nomination at the Latin Grammys and a Premio Ojo Crítico from the Radio Nacional de España. Aside from her skilled performances, she was commended for popularizing flamenco with younger audiences. Because of her success and acclaim of Los Angeles, Rosalia was pre-selected to represent Spain in Eurovision, which is an international song competition based in Europe. However, because she and Raúl were promoting her album, Rosalia declined. In addition, she had already begun recording her sophomore album, Mal Querer, as her baccalaureate project. The project is an experimental concept album that revolves around a bad relationship. It's also inspired by the 13th century Occitan novel, The Romance of Flamenca. The anonymous work tells the tale of a young woman imprisoned by her lover because he fears losing her to another man. Though in prison, the young woman is allowed to attend Catholic masses where she meets and falls in love with a knight. Each of the songs on El Mal Querer is named and meant to coincide with a chapter of the novel. Rosalia covers the same themes as the novel and the album, which include jealousy, mistrust, abuse, love, female empowerment, and emancipation. Rosalia said about the album, "I came across a 13th century novel called Flamenca by an anonymous author. I was struck by the coincidence of the title, which has nothing to do with the musical genre, and began to read it. It's the story of a woman who married a man who becomes consumed with jealousy, and he goes crazy and imprisons her. And it got me thinking almost anthropologically. Centuries later, have we altered the ways in which we love and relate to other people, or are we still acting in the same ways?" And to answer her question, I think it's a resounding yes. That's precisely why artists can modernize and reinterpret these works with such universal themes and they still resonate. Yes, our surroundings and circumstances may change over time, but things such as love are often universal to the human experience regardless of time. In her music, Rosalia often blends flamenco with hip-hop, R&B, electronic music, and pop. El Mal Querer has an even more contemporary sound than Los Angeles, which is definitely evident in songs like Malamente, Di Mi Nombre, or Piensa en tu mirar, which is one of my favorite Rosalia songs. She uses samples of alarms, sirens, and engines revving in De Aquí No Sales. Again, a reminder that this album is her modern interpretation of a nearly 1,000-year-old love story. The popularity of El Mal Querer made the romance of flamenco surge in popularity, and copies of the novel sold out. To meet demand, the University of Murcia released a new, user-friendly Spanish edition. Rosalia co-produced El Mal Querer with her friend and producer El Wincho and wrote all the songs on the album save for the interlude. El Mal Querer is in keeping with her very conceptual way of making and interpreting music. Pitchfork praised Rosalia for seamlessly linking flamenco's characteristic melodrama to the heart-wrenching storytelling of modern woman-flexing R&B. The album's visuals are inspired by several recognizable paintings, including Frida Kahlo's The Two Fridas, as well as Ophelia, another story that references the tragedy of womanhood. El Mal Querer was met with universal acclaim, with many praising Rosalia for bringing something new to music. The album made several 2018 year-end lists, topping lists made by Rolling Stone Argentina, ABC Spain, and Rock Deluxe. The New York Times, Paper Magazine, and Pitchfork all ranked it as 6th best. GQ Spain named it as the best album of the decade. In 2022, Rolling Stone ranked Mal Querer as the 10th best concept album of all time. The album was also credited with further popularizing flamenco globally and with bringing Rosalia herself international recognition. The album earned Rosalia 2 Latin Grammys, one for Album of the Year and the other for Best Contemporary Pop Vocal Album. In the United States, she won the Grammy for Best Latin Rock, Urban, or Alternative Album and was nominated for Best New Artist. Rosalia's meteoric popularity wasn't only because of her music and performing, but also the visual elements within those performances. Several of her stage costumes and even some red carpet looks have been inspired by the clothing of flamenco performers. Some of the common motifs Rosalia uses include flared pants, the exaggerated fringe and ruffles, updos, and red lips. Rosalia often wore the color red and made use of symbology popular in Spanish Catholicism.
So this look is rico and is inspired in Mantón de Manila. You know that this piece that is the traditional and it's very popular in Spain. So I was like, yes, I need to wear this, and Rick is one of my favorite designers in the world. So
me too. No, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And this is just so cool. I love how it's all one color. It's so awesome. These boots.
Right? Hello?
Wait, can you
I
guys
wanna
get a
wear
close
them
up on the
every day.
boots?
Rosalia also caught attention for extravagant jewelry, tooth gems, and nails, which were often long, colorful, and bejeweled. These elaborate nails became a signature part of her music videos and live performances, and another marker of the extravagance and splendor that Rosalia brings to her performances. For all her talents, Rosalia is a figure that inspires some controversy, with most of these conversations being in regards as to whether her music is appropriative. Throughout her career, Rosalia has been praised for bringing Andalusian culture to a global audience, while others say the culture isn't entirely hers to promote. With Mal Querer, Rosalia sparked accusations that she was appropriating not only Andalusian culture, but also Roma symbolism. Rosalia is Spanish, yes, but she isn't Andalusian. She and her family are from Sant Cugat de Vallès, a town in northern Spain. So rather than Andalusian, Rosalia is Catalonian. Because of this, some in Spain's Roma community especially felt Rosalia had no business performing flamenco, despite earning a master's degree in flamenco interpretation. Also, please, I am American, so if I misuse any of these terms or words in my explanation, please do correct me, but kindly though. Flamenco is considered part of Spain's national identity as it became more popular throughout the 19th century as the country urbanized. However, for a while it was frowned upon by Spanish elites because it was associated with the lower class and the Spanish Roma. Because of this, at the time, most Spanish elites did not want to be associated with flamenco, nor did they want it to represent Spanish identity. For a while, flamenco was representative of the social ills prevalent in Spain, at least to some of the elites. It was even considered immodest by the Catholic Church. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, flamenco became more popular at world fairs from which people from different countries would attend. Eventually, flamenco became popular and regarded as a unique art form by Parisians. Because of this, it eventually became more accepted by the Spanish as Parisians and other Europeans started showing more and more interest. It's not the exact same thing, but a decent parallel would be how jazz was treated in the United States, only becoming a more accepted genre after Europeans showed interest in it. In a statement to the World magazine, the Association of Feminist Gitanas for Diversity said about Rosalia, "If you stick feminist slogans in your songs but then contribute to the oppression of other women through your actions and capitalist practices, that's not being a feminist, that's being a poser." Aside from the music itself, Rosalia has been criticized for using an Andalusian accent and using Zocalo words, which is the Spanish Romani language, in her music. It was also noted that a Roma woman likely would not have been able to reach Rosalia's level of success. In an interview with El Mundo, Rosalia stated, "Music has nothing to do with blood or territory. Never. I have studied flamenco for years. I respect it more than anything, and I know its origins. I know that it comes from the mixture of ethnic groups, which is a fusion of Black, Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish sounds. Flamenco is not owned by anyone, in fact, and there's nothing wrong with experimenting with it. It's healthy." Gitana activist Noelia Cortez stated, "Flamenco is suffering a kind of institutional racism that whitewashes the art form and markets it like a piece of meat wrapped up in plastic." Publications like the New York Times have defended Rosalia, stating, "The debate on the cultural appropriation of the Spanish singer is unfair. Her music embodies with height the most eloquent artistic form of globalization, the remix." Aside from flamenco, Rosalia has been criticized for collecting awards and nominations intended for Latin artists, such as Latin Grammys. Though Rosalia is Spanish and is Spanish-speaking, she is not a Latina because she is not from Latin America. Genial, or the Organization for Generating Engagements and New Initiatives for All Latinos, defines Latina, Latino, or Latinx as follows. The term Latino or Latina includes people from Brazil and excludes those who were born in or descended from Spain. Not all Brazilians identify themselves as Latino or Latina, but many do. Thus, Hispanic refers more to language, while Latino or Latina refers more to culture. Rosalia has also received backlash for participating in interviews that state or imply she's a Latina. One example was her participation in an interview called Growing Up Latino that she posted on TikTok.
I'm from Barcelona, and this is Growing Up Latino on Billboard.
This is why it's important for us to know the difference between Hispanics and Latinos. Rosalia is from Spain. She is a European woman. She is not a Latina. However, she is Hispanic because she comes from a Spanish-speaking country. She is not Latina because she is not from Latino America. But let's continue watching this interview.
I've been studying flamenco, and I saw that flamenco has Colombiana style, Guajira style. I went to Panama, or when I went to Mexico, I feel like I'm at home. So yeah, I feel Latina.
Appreciating arts from another culture does not give you the right to then claim that culture. For example, I love K-pop. If I go visit Korea, I'm not gonna come back and say, yeah, I'm Asian now. What is that? You can definitely appreciate another culture's art, but don't pretend that you're part of the culture when you're not. That's super problematic because you take opportunities away from actual Latino artists.
In a Refinery 29 article, writer Michelle Santiago Cortez acknowledged the complexities of the issue, stating, "People are tired of Rosalia's Latinx drag. It's been dissected over and over again. We bang our heads against the crumbling walls of Latinidad itself, insisting that Rosalia is not a Latina, while also being wholly unable to produce an accurate definition of Latinidad. Some in jest and others with complete conviction have deemed Rosalia a present-day musical colonizer." Cortez goes on to state other Spaniards like Enrique Iglesias, Penelope Cruz, or Antonio Banderas have been wrongly classified as Latino, but have increased visibility for Spanish-speaking artists. She writes, "We could argue that, in their rise to fame, these individuals took advantage of the work of oppressed people responsible for the Latin explosion and expanded the audience of Spanish-language music. But that assumes that the music and the entertainment industries value Black and brown people, which they do not. It assumes those industries don't exploit marginalized groups for their art, and it assumes they're not looking for a white Latinx or Spaniard to sell these art forms." After Mal Querer, Rosalia took a hiatus between albums. However, she released several singles and collaborations with other artists. One of her older singles, Antes de Morirme, became popular after being featured in an episode of the Spanish-language series Elite. Rosalia collaborated with her ex C. Tangana on the song prior to their 2017 breakup. He also has writing credits on 8 songs on El Mal Querer. In 2019, Rosalia released Conatura with El Guincho and J Balvin. The year prior, she'd featured on his song Brillo. Conatura is a song about being wild and free and living a luxurious lifestyle. It's a deviation from her mostly flamenco-influenced music, and the song is primarily reggaeton and Latin pop. Rolling Stone called it a modern take and referenced the Spanish flamenco songs inspired by Afro-Caribbean sounds and called the song Rosalia's homage to reggaeton. On the first day of its release, Conatura became the most streamed song in Spain by a female artist. Within a week, it became the most streamed song in the country. Conatura earned Rosalia her second #1 in Spain, and the song also went #1 in Argentina, the Dominican Republic, on the Billboard Mexican Airplay charts, and in Venezuela. In 2019, Conatura won the Latin Grammy for Best Urban Song. For her work that year, and for El Mal Querer, Rosalia won the Rising Star Award at Billboard's Women in Music ceremony. Months after Conatura, Rosalia and Ozuna released Yo por ti, tú por mí. The summery, flirty single is about a young couple who believes it's them against the world. Again, the song was primarily reggaeton with some flamenco and electronic influences. Also, I just want to say really quickly, I've seen Yo por ti, tú por mí be classified as a reggaeton and dembow online. So, please let me know, please correct me, because I'm not entirely sure which it is. The song went #1 in Spain, as well as on the US Latin Airplay and Latin Rhythm Airplay charts on Billboard. It also earned Rosalia and Ozuna the Latin Grammy for Best Urban Song and Best Urban Fusion Performance. The song also earned El Wincho a nomination for Producer of the Year. Aside from winning Latin Grammys and technically not being a Latin artist herself, Rosalia has also been criticized for making reggaeton music. Reggaeton is a subgenre of music that traces back to Panama in the late 80s. West Indian immigrants who came to the country to build the Panama Canal brought with them reggae and dancehall music, and it eventually fused into a new genre with Latin influence. Often Latin artists would sing over reggae or dancehall beats in Spanish. Initially, this music was called reggae en español. This is also where the dembow beat originates. In 1990, Jamaican reggae artist Shabba Ranks released a song called Dembow. The song was covered by the Panamanian group Nando Boom, popularizing the beat named Dembow for the song. This is a reason that they're now considered the godfathers of dembow and reggaeton. Dembow is also extremely popular in the Dominican Republic, where it is typically characterized by its much faster and louder beat, which makes it a popular club rhythm. In the mid-2010s, it became popular to infuse Dominican dembow beats with American trap beats. When reggae en español was transported to Puerto Rico, the dembow beat took on a more hip-hop influence, birthing reggaeton. As genres such as hip-hop and dancehall became more popular in Puerto Rico, reggaeton became more popular as well. The term was coined in 1988 to describe the music of El General, meaning reggae grande or big reggae. Both reggaeton and dembow are emblematic of the ongoing intercultural exchange between the Caribbean and Latin America. Reggaeton is now a popular genre in and produces artists from countries including Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. In the early 2000s, it became increasingly popular for reggaeton artists and American hip-hop artists to collaborate. This is in part attributed to the father of reggaeton, Daddy Yankee's Gasolina, which caught the attention of many American rappers. Aside from her singles with J Balvin and Ozuna, Rosalia put out several other singles in 2019. They run the gamut from songs about being young and rich like Millonaria or Haute Couture to more somber sounds reminiscent of her early work like Barefoot in the Park, James Blake's song on which she features. Rosalia has stated James Blake, primarily his self-titled album, as one of her musical influences. A lot of her music does have that atmospheric melancholy that characterizes so much of James Blake's music. Still, at this time, it was clear that Rosalia's music was taking on a less folk, more modern avant-pop sound. Though she didn't abandon her flamenco infusion, several of her songs from this time period have a more urbano feel. Urbano is an umbrella term in Latin music that spans several countries and includes genres such as reggaeton, dembow, dancehall, and Latin hip-hop. The term originated in Afro-Latin communities, and though it isn't an entirely direct comparison, it is a little similar to how so-called urban music is classified in the United States. And for similar reasons as in America, there has been pushback against using the term urbano to describe artists and their music. According to the LA Times, urbano music and Latin music in general exploded in popularity in the US around 2017. Reggaeton is probably the best example currently. And of course, they're speaking in terms of the mainstream because several genres of Latin music have always been popular in the US. And this isn't just happening in the US. Reggaeton-influenced music is becoming popular in other industries like K-pop. Examples include BB's BB Vengeance and Kai's Rover, though there's debate over whether that song is more dancehall or more reggaeton. The most popular example is likely Les Seraphim's Anti-Fragile, which is heavily reggaeton influenced. When the song came out, several people even said that it sounded like a Rosalia song. As I mentioned earlier, Rosalia has also stated she's influenced by American hip-hop and R&B. This is apparent in songs like Apale, which combine her flamenco background with glitch pop and avant hip-hop. The song is dark and brooding and one where you can feel the bass in your chest. The song's title is inspired by Rosalia's upbringing. The area she grew up in was dominated by the trucking industry, so wooden shipping pallets were everywhere. Rosalia uses the wooden pallets as a metaphor to be strong, do big things, and carry whatever weight is put upon you. Her styling in the video is a reference to Frida Kahlo, as well as Francisco de Goya's painting of the Duchess of Alba called The White Duchess. In 2020, Rosalia paired up with Travis Scott to release Taken, best described as a reggaeton and trap infusion. In the song, Travis and Rosalia paint each other as a pair of gangsters who consider one another chosen family. The pair worked together previously when Rosalia featured on Travis's Highest in the Room remix. Taken went number 1 in Spain and Colombia, and it won a Latin Grammy for Best Short-Form Music Video. Soon after, she collaborated with Arca on the deconstructed club Zocalo. Though the song is mostly deconstructed avant-pop, the reggaeton influence is clear as well. Earlier that year, Rosalia also released Juroque, a return to her flamenco pop. Juroque heavily features guitar, which is a staple in flamenco, and is about an imprisoned lover. In the early days of the pandemic, Rosalia released Dolerme, a song about changing for and being hurt by someone who doesn't deserve her affection. Rosalia released the song with a message expressing well wishes to those in quarantine and those who still had to work despite it. She had been expected to put out a harder-hitting single, but surprise released Dolerme because it represented her current feelings. After the flurry of singles and collaborations Rosalia put out in about a 3-year period, she announced her third album, Motomami. She began working on it in 2019, but the pandemic slowed the process. Motomami is another concept album in which Rosalia expresses her feelings caused by the way her life and the world have transformed over the last few years. The themes she discusses include fame, isolation, and homesickness. The album's name is an homage to her friends, motorcycles, and her mother, who she said is the OG Motomami. Rosalia also cited Hunter Schafer as one of her friends who directly inspired the album. To Rosalia, Motomami means forging ahead despite the setbacks, also represented by the use of her butterfly motif on the cover. The album cover is said to represent Sandro Botticelli's Renaissance painting The Birth of Venus, as well as the album cover from Prince's posthumous album The Originals. A big change from her first 2 albums, Motomami is primarily a pop and alternative reggaeton album. The album wasn't entirely absent of Rosalia's flamenco pop, as it's impaired in songs like Bulerías. Rosalia said there was so much reggaeton on the album because she was inspired by Latin American music, and a lot of her song delivery she learned from reggaeton artists. More specifically, Rosalia said the album took a lot of inspiration from Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. She told Billboard, "I'm very proud to be from Barcelona, but I love that my music is affected by the fact that I travel, the fact that I'm in new spaces and new places and surrounded by new people constantly. And that affects the way I sound and the way I write. That pin changes. There's no correct or incorrect in making music. If I thought like that, I wouldn't do anything. I always feel like music is about an urge." In Motomami, there are so many different influences. There's a flamenco influence, a bolero influence, a dembow. And I need to feel free to create, and I need to create in order to feel free. I make music because that's my truth. Again, Rosalia was accused of cultural appropriation. Saoko, one of Motomami's singles, was a point of contention. The single was released in February of 2022, and just as quickly, it was met with some criticism on Twitter and TikTok. She was again criticized for making reggaeton music despite being a Spaniard. Rosalia intended the song to be a tribute to Wisin and Daddy Yankee and their own song called Saoko. The word Saoko itself is Puerto Rican slang for an outstanding rhythm. Rosalia's version is an alternative take on the reggaeton hit and samples the original song. The response to Saoko wasn't entirely critical. One Redditor claimed all Spanish-speaking artists have dabbled in reggaeton, while another stated that growing up Latin, he was used to hearing Spanish-speaking artists borrow from one another. Another claimed that primarily the outrage over this was in America, and they personally hadn't heard anyone where they lived in Latin America take issue with Rosalia. Some have thanked her for popularizing their music and slang, while others think she's capitalizing off of a culture that isn't hers. And as with most issues, since no one community is a monolith, you'll see varying responses and feelings on the topic. Some who were critical of the song itself just stated that it was difficult to understand what Rosalia was saying in Saoko, even for Spanish speakers, and that the song itself felt incomplete. Despite some of the controversy it stirred, Motomami is a critically acclaimed album. Rosalia was again lauded for her experimentation and releasing a fresh-sounding, genre-bending album. Motomami even included a feature from The Weeknd, who sang with Rosalia in Spanish on La Fama, an electropop-influenced bachata about fame. She previously joined him for his Blinding Lights remix. Rosalia also collaborated with Dominican dembow artist Toquisha, with whom she also made the song Linda. Aside from herself and El Wincho, Rosalia worked with a team of producers this time around, one of whom included Pharrell Williams. With over 16 million streams in its first day, Motomami became Spotify's biggest debut for a Spanish album by a female artist. Motomami won all 4 of its nominations at the Latin Grammys. The album won Album of the Year, Best Engineered Album, Best Alternative Music Album, and Best Recording Package. Motomami earned Rosalia Best Latin Rock or Alternative Album at the 2023 Grammys and Producer of the Year at the 2023 Billboard Women in Music Awards. Motomami was Metacritic's highest rated and most talked about album of 2022. Critics compared the introspective lyricism and experimentation to that of artists including Lorde, Frank Ocean, Kanye West, and Moby. In the summer of 2022, Rosalia began her second international tour, the Motomami tour. Where most people typically can agree on Rosalia is concerning her captivating talent as a performer. Even early into her career, she was noted for having a confidence and sureness about herself that several performers lack. Again, Rosalia was praised for her stage presence, stamina, and execution of the choreography, for which her dancers, called Motopapis, were also commended. For months, she became a TikTok meme for her gum chewing at the beginning of her song Bizcochito. Critics called the Motomami tour futuristic yet minimalistic. Even Rosalia's tour outfits are more biker chic and less accessory-laden than her previous stage costumes. Rosalia didn't perform with a live band, another reminder of the experimental and electronic production on Motomami. She did, however, play instruments herself during the show. Rolling Stone said that though the show was loud and eclectic, its minimalism was intended to show off Rosalia's raw talent. The publication also praised her ability to elicit emotions from the audience and immerse them in the performance. In some moments, Rosalia danced, in others she was on the floor or taking selfies. Recently, Rosalia performed at Coachella on the main stage, receiving rave reviews for her set. Some expressed hope in seeing her headline in the future because the performance she gave was headliner-worthy already. Her fiancé, fellow artist Raul Alejandro, joined her for part of the performance. He has called Rosalia one of the hardest working people he knows and has spoken highly for dedicated preparation for the performance. Earlier this year, the couple released a joint EP. Rosalia performed for the first time at Coachella back in 2019, following the release of Mal Querer. Her set was called Heartfelt and Captivating, and she performed several of her flamenco songs. J Balvin also joined her for the performance. Recently, Rosalia performed a free concert in the town square of Mexico City, known as Zocalo. The square has been called the most important one in the country, and several other prominent artists have played there. The crowd was massive, with it being estimated that over 200,000 fans were in attendance. Rosalia has been cited as a shining example of the benefits of truly honing one's craft before performing publicly. Every time she steps on stage, it's clear that she's a seasoned performer. Her many years of training and perfecting her artistry are evident, but she doesn't allow this to make her complacent or stop striving to give more each time. Alright, so definitely do be sure down in the comments to let me know your thoughts and opinions on Rosalia's music and her career. And if you yourself are Spanish, or if you're Latin American, or have Latin American heritage, if you're comfortable, can you please give us, some sort of firsthand perspective on the issue? I know everyone's opinions will be different, but of course your opinion will be, not more valid, but more informed probably than what I can put together from a little bit of research, because while I can get the facts together, I might not understand every single nuance of the topic as well as you might. And I do think as someone who is a Black American, I can see a lot of parallels that I didn't really know about before researching, just being an American on the outside of the situation looking in. And I do think, like most things, this is a case where two things can be true. We can acknowledge Rosalia's talent, but then also acknowledge the questions that it raises and the fact that not everyone is going to have the same answer, if they have any answer at all, to the questions that are being raised, if that makes sense. So if you do have an opinion, I would love to hear it, but please be respectful and compassionate in the comments as always. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for bearing through my Spanish accent. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter so that you can keep up with me there. And again, thank you so very much for watching. Love you so very much, and see you so very soon. Bye-bye.